Imagine a world where your thoughts, desires, and even your most mundane decisions aren't truly yours. You buy what you're told to buy, vote for whom you're told to vote for, and all this without ever realizing it. In this world, one man stands in the shadows, pulling the strings, Edward Bernays. You've probably never heard of him, but his influence is everywhere. Every ad you see, every political speech you hear, and even in your deepest beliefs. Take, for instance, the cigarette that so many women began to smoke in the 1920s. It wasn't merely a gesture of rebellion. Behind this movement was a diabolically brilliant plan to manipulate millions into making cigarettes a symbol of feminine freedom. Bernays was behind this plan. But that was just the beginning. How could one man control entire crowds, shape our consumption habits, and mold public opinion without anyone noticing? Get ready to discover how Edward Bernays manipulated the world, and could still manipulate your mind without you ever realizing it. And this isn't just a mere anecdote from history. You'll see that the weapon he created, a psychological gun, is still loaded today, ready to be used at every moment to influence our daily lives. But this gun, you may never have seen coming.
It's 1919. A young man, barely 27 years old, Edward Bernays, sits in a dark office in New York, staring at a letter on his desk. It's a correspondence from his uncle, Sigmund Freud, whose ideas about the unconscious are revolutionizing psychology. This isn't the first time Bernays has received writings from Freud, but this time a question begins to obsess him. What if we could apply these theories to manipulate the masses, not just individually, but on a large scale? This moment marks a turning point. Bernays, who had been interested in public relations until now, suddenly realizes that he holds a far more powerful weapon than mere communication: the manipulation of hidden desires, buried fears, and unconscious impulses. It's no longer just about convincing people to think differently, but about making them believe they are choosing for themselves. The family connection to Freud is not incidental. While Freud explores the depths of the unconscious to heal individual traumas, Bernays sees a much broader opportunity to use these discoveries to control the crowds. If Freud seeks to free the human mind from its inner chains, Bernays, on the other hand, discreetly reinforces them with invisible techniques. But all of this was just the beginning. What he was about to do next would forever change our way of consuming, voting, and even thinking. New York, 1929. A crowd gathers on Fifth Avenue during the famous Easter parade. Suddenly, a group of women steps forward, proudly lighting cigarettes in the middle of the parade. They don't know yet that they are participating in one of the most brilliant and dangerous manipulation campaigns in history. Behind this scene lurks the shadow of Edward Bernays, orchestrating a campaign that would revolutionize advertising and change societal norms. But what does this staging truly hide? At that time, smoking was considered an undignified act for a woman, a deeply ingrained social taboo. But for major tobacco companies, it also represented an untapped market. Bernays, hired by American Tobacco, faced a challenge: making tobacco acceptable for women. Rather than simply selling cigarettes, he had a much more insidious idea: to transform the cigarette into a symbol of female freedom. And how did he go about it? By exploiting the emerging feminist movement. Bernays knew that society was undergoing a transformation and that women were beginning to claim their independence. He hired influential women to publicly challenge conventions, declaring their cigarettes as torches of freedom. This was no longer just a cigarette. It was an act of rebellion, a symbol of power. With this simple image, a woman holding a lit cigarette like a torch of freedom, Bernays had redefined the object, changing it from a controversial product to a symbol of emancipation. The media, blinded by the provocation, rushed to cover the event. What no one knew was that Bernays had calculated everything to ensure these images spread widely, imprinting the idea that smoking was now a liberating gesture. But this was just the beginning. Bernays had just demonstrated that he could not only manipulate public opinion, but also hijack a social movement to serve commercial interests. And if this campaign was merely a prelude to even greater manipulations to come. It's 1928, and Edward Bernays is about to publish a book that will shake the world of communication. In his book Propaganda, he doesn't just propose marketing strategies. He makes a bold statement: Mass manipulation is not only inevitable, but essential for the proper functioning of society. But who could believe that such manipulation could be beneficial? Bernays opens his book by asking a provocative question. Who controls public opinion? For him, this control should be exercised by an enlightened elite, capable of guiding the often irrational masses. Instead of merely convincing, it's about manipulating emotions, playing on deep-rooted fears and desires. His vision was of a society where the true decision-makers were not necessarily political leaders, but those who knew how to shape people's thoughts. Using the psychoanalytic theories of his uncle Freud, Bernays explains that the unconscious is a reservoir of desires and impulses that escape our conscious control. He was convinced that if we could touch these unconscious desires, we could influence behavior without individuals even realizing it. This is where the key to his manipulation lies, transforming latent needs into explicit desires. For instance, by associating products with positive emotions or creating narratives that evoke feelings of nostalgia or belonging, Bernays could lead consumers to want what they never thought they wanted before. But what happens when this power falls into the wrong hands? And this is precisely what made him dangerous. What Bernays proposes in propaganda isn't just a communication method, but a weapon capable of distorting reality. The consequences of this manipulation can be deep and lasting, shaping not only the market, but also the perception of the world around us. The question remains, could the tool that Bernays so skillfully honed be used for more sinister ends in the future? The pages of his book may be the preamble to an era where public opinion becomes a puppet, and manipulators the true masters of the stage. We are in the 1930s, a time of great social and economic transformation in the United States. At this point, Edward Bernays is no longer just a name in the advertising world. He has become the architect of a cultural revolution. With an audacious vision, he doesn't just sell products, he sells dreams. But how did he manage to change our relationship with consumption so radically? Bernays understands that transforming society requires much more than catchy slogans. It's about creating desires, shaping aspirations. With his campaign for Palmolive soap, he didn't just promote a cleaning product. He launched the idea that beauty and cleanliness were essential elements of happiness and success. By associating soap with images of attractive women and ideal lives, he embedded in consumers' minds the notion that owning this product was synonymous with social success. This strategy established a culture where the need to consume becomes insatiable. Bernays' campaigns didn't just limit themselves to material products. They created a climate where human desires became increasingly tied to consumer goods. This delicate alchemy between desire and consumption paved the way for what we now call the consumer society. But at what cost? While Bernays succeeded in transforming the economic landscape, he also set in motion a dynamic that continues to influence our behavior as consumers. Today, brands no longer just sell products, they sell experiences, identities, values. We have become consumers above all, measured not by what we own, but by what we desire. And this insatiable desire is precisely what Bernays sought to provoke. He knew that true power lay in the ability to transform fundamental human needs into dependency on material goods. Now, as we navigate an ocean of choices, it's legitimate to ask, are we truly masters of our decisions, or merely puppets of the desires that Bernays and his successors have so skillfully created? It's 1917, at the height of World War I. Edward Bernays, at 35, is emerging as one of the American propaganda strategists. The U.S. government entrusts him with a crucial mission to convince the American people to enter the war. But behind this mission lies a darker reality. How could one man manipulate an entire nation? With his flair for communication, Bernays employs all the techniques he learned from his uncle Freud. He understands that patriotism and fear can be powerful weapons. By creating the Committee on Public Information, he orchestrates a propaganda campaign that not only informs, but conditions minds. Posters show brave soldiers and women mourning their lost husbands. Slogans appeal to the American way of life and the need to defend freedom. By leveraging these emotions, Bernays succeeds in conveying a simple message: joining the war effort is being a hero. However, the story doesn't stop there. Fast forward to 1954. Bernays plays a pivotal role in the CIA's Operation PBS Success, a covert plan to overthrow the democratically elected president of Guatemala. Through a media campaign, he paints President Jacobo Arbenz as a communist threat to the United States. The result? The Guatemalan government is toppled, and Bernays once again demonstrates his talent for shaping public perception to justify the political interests of the United States. But what happens when the strategies of manipulation enter the political arena? Can we still trust the information we receive? As we examine these historical cases, we must consider the extent of influence that figures like Bernays have had on the course of history. The lines between truth and manipulation become increasingly blurred, and we find ourselves asking, is this a new form of power? Fast forward to the present day. Edward Bernays passed away in 1995, but his legacy is more alive than ever. In a world dominated by social media and digital communication, his techniques have evolved but remain at the heart of our daily experiences. With just a click, you're exposed to thousands of images, stories, and advertisements, all vying for your attention. But how much of this is genuinely your choice? The rise of social media has amplified Bernays' techniques. Platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram have created a new landscape where emotions and desires are manipulated in real time. Algorithms determine what you see, shaping your opinions and preferences based on what you've liked before. Advertisements are increasingly personalized, making it harder to distinguish between genuine interests and manipulated choices. Moreover, the digital era has made it possible for large corporations and political groups to conduct manipulation campaigns on an unprecedented scale. The Cambridge Analytica scandal, for instance, reveals how data can be weaponized to influence elections, target ads, and ultimately sway public opinion. These tactics are reminiscent of Bernays' methods, demonstrating that the art of manipulation is far from dead. As we navigate this maze of information, the question lingers, are we still susceptible to the same techniques Bernays pioneered decades ago? His influence resonates in the political and marketing spheres, urging us to critically examine the motivations behind what we see and consume. We must remain vigilant, questioning not only what we believe, but also why we believe it. In this age of instant gratification and boundless information, are we still unaware of the hidden puppeteers? Are we simply dancing to their tune, just as Bernays envisioned? Edward Bernays changed the world, turning communication into a tool for manipulation and control. His legacy prompts us to examine our choices critically and seek the truth behind the messages we receive. But it's not just about recognizing manipulation, it's about reclaiming our autonomy. As you move forward, I challenge you, question everything. What are you being sold? What narratives are you consuming? The journey toward understanding begins with the courage to doubt and challenge. And if you found this exploration of Edward Bernays intriguing, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our community for more deep dives into the unseen forces shaping our world. Let's not allow history to repeat itself. Together, let's take back our power and refuse to be mere puppets in the grand theater of manipulation. The time for action is now.